Now I'm sure I'm not alone in sort of forgetting about waters and letting them fall off the radar, and this is one such place. The last time I visited this lake, it was little more than a hole in the middle of a field. But thinking about it, it's probably 30 years ago at least since I was last down here, and finding myself with a unexpected free afternoon and nowhere in mind to go, I just happened to wind up here again. And a quick walk round revealed half a dozen carp mooching about on the surface, and whilst I certainly don't consider myself to be an out and out carp angler, I do enjoy some surface fishing, and I do enjoy fishing for carp. It's more everything that goes with modern carp fishing that I don't enjoy so much. So I grabbed a rod and a tub of floaters, and I thought I'd try my luck. And whilst the fish were quite happy to be out in the open when I walked around the first time, just throwing in the odd pellet here and there, as soon as I brought a rod out, they disappeared. And they made a beeline for the snag on the far bank. And it was clear that I was going to be flogging a dead horse out in the open, as the fish had made it back to this snag and were hugging the far margin. And when I say hugging the far margin, they were really hugging the far margin. But if the fish won't come to me, then I'm quite happy to go to the fish. And whilst I would never advocate or encourage anybody to cast into snags, if you're patient and you are tactical with the way that you feed, you can draw the fish out. And that was my intention. The aim was going to be to draw them out of the snag, but keep them on this margin that they were clearly quite comfortable in, and then try and select a fish to go for. And I'd already seen a fish, a very distinctive mirror with two large scales on its flank, that seemed to be quite a bit larger than anything else around it. And so that was the fish that I was going to set my stall out for. But that was also the fish that really didn't want to come out of the trees. So it took probably the best part of an hour's feeding, and ever so slowly this larger mirror gained confidence and started to come out into open water. And it was encouraged by the fact that there was a couple of small commons feeding as well. And once I got it moving down the margin and towards me, I thought it was going to be a fairly straightforward affair. And this is one of the great things about surface fishing or stalking in general, is that you can select a fish and that's the fish you're going to go for. But at the same time, you do need to be a little careful, because fish that you're not intending to fish for do have a habit of rushing in and grabbing the bait if you're not careful. But I was certain that this was the mirror coming down towards me, and I really did think that I was only a matter of seconds away from hooking it, because by this point it was feeding really confidently. Now I should point out that I'd been feeding, as with most of my surface fishing, I was feeding 4mm expander pellet, which is just a floating trout pellet really, and that's by far and away my favourite feed. But my hook bait was slightly bigger, and this fish clocked that straight away. Its whole demeanour and body language changed as soon as it came to the hook bait. It just wasn't interested. The hook bait was just something about it was obviously sending off danger signals. And so I tried a couple of times, but I could see the fish becoming more and more agitated. So rather than risk spooking it, I thought it far better to bring the bait in and have a bit of a rethink. Now the hook baits that I use are a shop bought, specially designed or purposely designed floating hook bait, and they're quite soft, so you can trim them down. So having taken the larger hook bait off, I trimmed one down so it was just capable of holding the weight of a size 12 hook. So I trimmed it down as small as possible. But then obviously I had to wait for the fish to come back. But me fishing was obviously the most exciting thing to happen recently, because even the local deer population stopped to take a look. And I made a slight change of angle. By now the mirror had been joined by a common of a similar length. It didn't look quite as broad, it didn't look quite as deep, but it was a similar sized fish, and it was been a bit of a nuisance because it was rushing around. It wasn't feeding methodically, it was chasing about all over the show, and quite often that can spook other fish in the swim. Occasionally it will encourage them and create competitive feeding, but very often if you've got a fish shooting around, it will put the others on edge. And the mirror and the common were swimming very close together. They were under and over each other, and it was the mirror that I wanted, so I needed the mirror to come away, and luckily it did. And you can't even see my hook bait, it's that small. It's barely holding up a size 12 hook, but it was big enough for the fish to see. And then it was panic stations, and I needed to clamp down to stop the fish from getting back in the snag. And I actually pushed the rod under the water, and once the fish had kited out, I won't say it was danger over, but the first hurdle was cleared. And other than the lily pads opposite me, there was nothing else really to my right, so I was quite happy to let the fish run that way. Although I was keeping the rod really quite low, just to try and keep the fish up in the water in case there were any branches on the bottom. And the poor old holdfast was bending from tip to butt, and after really quite a protracted fight, I finally had a rather large carp at the surface. And as seems to be a theme lately, it was getting bigger the closer it got to the net. And for the third time this year, I felt compelled to get the scales out. And you can see the two scales on its flank there. And at 21 pounds an ounces, I didn't think it was a bad way to open my account at this particular lake. and I think possibly it could be the biggest fish in the lake. It was the biggest fish I saw. That doesn't mean much because I wasn't there for long. But a lovely fish, a lovely fight, and it's always nice when you have a plan and it comes together. And I thought there might be a chance of another fish, but thunder was starting to rumble in the distance, and the weather was on the turn, and even though there was still the odd fish about, so the rain rolled in. Rain that we desperately need. And in truth, the rivers need the rain far more than I needed to cast again. So with that, I called it a day and made my way home.